The flashing red and blue lights in Officer Ryan Carter's rear VYEW mirror weren't just confusing, they were infuriating. Ryan, a seasoned officer with the Maplewood Police Department, stared in disbelief as a golf cart with flashing orange lights weaved erratically down the road behind him. The driver, a pudgy man with an oversized security badge glistening in the afternoon sun, wore a smug grin that made Ryan's blood boil. This wasn't a police officer. It was Victor, the self-proclaimed enforcer of the Maplewood Heights Homeowners Association, HOA, and he had the audacity to pull over a cop. Ryan sighed, his hand instinctively hovering over his badge and gun. Years of training had taught him how to stay calm under pressure, but this was something else entirely. He pulled to the side of the road, curiosity winning out over annoyance. Victor waddled up to Ryan's window, clipboard in hand, adjusting his cheap sunglasses like he was about to issue a federal warrant. "Sir," Victor barked, his voice shrill with self-importance. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Ryan stared at him for a long moment, unsure if the man was serious. "Yeah," Ryan said dryly. "I don't." Victor's chest puffed out. "This is Maplewood Heights. HOA policy strictly forbids commercial vehicles being parked or driven within community limits. And this," he gestured broadly at Ryan's official police cruiser, "is a commercial vehicle." Ryan let out a short laugh, the absurdity washing over him like cold water. "This is a patrol car," Ryan said, still struggling to comprehend Victor's confidence. "I'm a cop." "You're a homeowner," Victor snapped, tapping his clipboard. "Which means you're under HOA jurisdiction the moment you cross those gates." Ryan's amusement evaporated. "You're joking." "I never joke about HOA policy," Victor said gravely. "If this vehicle isn't gone by tomorrow morning, we'll start fining you." He scribbled something on his clipboard, then slapped a citation onto Ryan's windshield like he had just delivered a death sentence. Ryan snatched the paper and glanced at it. "Do Law 75 for VY-OLADing HOA vehicle policy." He exhaled sharply, telling himself it wasn't worth getting worked up over. Maplewood Heights had been a quiet place when he moved in to care for his aging father, but now he was starting to see the dark side of his seemingly peaceful community. The next morning, Ryan awoke to find a second violation notice stuffed under his wiper. This one claimed his cruiser's tires were unsightly due to dirt splatter. His annoyance grew into full-blown rage when he spotted Victor a few houses down, clipboard in hand, chatting smugly with Evelyn, the HOA president. Evelyn was a wiry, balding woman who walked like she had absolute control over everything within a 5-mile radius. Ryan knew the type power hungry, manipulative, and always armed with some obscure rule to get her way. Ryan decided enough was enough. Marching down the street in his uniform, badge on full display, he approached Victor and Evelyn. "You're not putting another ticket on my car," Ryan growled. Evelyn smirked. "I understand you're a police officer, Carter, but Maplewood Heights operates under a strict set of guidelines. If you can't follow them, there will be consequences." "You're threatening me now?" Ryan shot back. "Not a threat," Evelyn said, her voice dripping with fake charm. "Just a reminder. If you keep pushing, I'll start exploring ways to enforce the rules more aggressively." Ryan clenched his fists. He was a patient man, but the smugness in Evelyn's eyes made him want to test just how well HOA fines could serve VYV under the weight of a police-issued baton. For a while, Ryan ignored the HOA's antics, but Victor's tactics escalated. Violation notices started VYing daily fines for Leah VYing his trash bins out 2 minutes too long, for parking too close to the curb, and even for his garden hose being too VY-sible. Then came the real blow. A certified letter informing Ryan that multiple violations could result in the HOA filing a lien on his property. His home, the one he bought to care for his father, was now at risk. Ryan realized this wasn't just an overzealous HOA president on a power trip. He started noticing a pattern. Elderly residents were targeted most VYLY, fines stacking up until they were forced to sell their homes cheaply. The homes, oddly enough, seemed to end up in the hands of private investors, all close friends of Evelyn. Determined to expose what was really happening, Ryan dug deeper. He learned that Evelyn's so-called investors had formed a shell company, quietly flipping properties for profit. Worse still, HOA funds seemed to be mysteriously disappearing, and residents who protested found themselves buried in endless violations until they gave up. One night, after a late shift, Ryan returned home to find his patrol car missing from his driveway. Furious, he called the local impound lot and learned his car had been towed by request of the HOA. Ryan stormed into the HOA office the next morning, finding Evelyn sipping coffee behind her pristine desk. "You had my patrol car towed?" Ryan snapped. "That's right," Evelyn said smugly. "Commercial vehicle." "You've crossed the line," Ryan warned. "I know what you're doing. I know about the shell company. I know about the missing HOA funds. This won't end well for you." Evelyn's face darkened, and her smile turned cold. "Be careful, Carter. A man can find himself in a lot of trouble if he doesn't know when to back off." The warning rang in Ryan's ears as he walked home. Something about the way Evelyn had said it left him unsettled. This wasn't just HOA politics anymore. This was something bigger, something more dangerous. The next morning, Ryan found a dead rat nailed to his front door. Attached to it was a note. "Don't push it." Ryan knew then that this wasn't just about fines anymore. Evelyn's operation was deeper, dirtier, and far more dangerous than he'd imagined. It wasn't just his home at stake, no, it was the entire neighborhood. Maybe even lives. He wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Ryan spent the next morning carefully documenting everything. Every violation notice, every threat, every suspicious interaction with Evelyn. He even took photographs of the rat and the note before tossing them in the garbage. Years of working as a police officer had taught him the value of evidence, and this felt like the kind of case that was going to need it. That afternoon, Ryan parked his newly retrieved patrol car prominently in his driveway, positioning it at just the right angle to irritate Evelyn and Victor. Predictably, Victor showed up within 20 minutes, clipboard in hand. Ryan stepped out of his house before Victor could place yet another violation notice on his windshield. "Don't bother," Ryan said, crossing his arms. "I'm not moving it." Victor smiled smugly. "Then expect another fine." "You know what, Victor?" Ryan said, his voice calm. "Why don't you tell your boss that if she wants my car gone, she can talk to me herself?" Victor's grin faltered slightly, but he scribbled on his clipboard anyway before waddling back down the street. Ryan waited until Victor was out of sight before heading to his neighbor Clara's house. Clara was in her 60s, a retired cybersecurity consultant with a sharp mind and no love for the HOA. Ryan knew she'd been hit with her fair share of ridiculous fines as well. Clara let Ryan inside and handed him a cup of coffee before he could even ask. She listened quietly as Ryan laid out everything. The bogus violations, the suspicious fines targeting elderly residents, the shell company buying up properties. When he finished, Clara leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowed. "You're right," she said. "Evelyn's got her hands in something big. I've been suspicious for a while now." Ryan wasn't surprised. Clara was the kind of person who saw patterns where others didn't. Over the years, she'd quietly collected her own pile of evidence against Evelyn. Financial records, property transfers, and even photographs of Evelyn meeting with shady-looking individuals who seemed to have no legitimate business in Maplewood Heights. What she didn't have, however, was the kind of hard evidence that could take Evelyn down for good. "We need proof," Ryan said. "Something undeniable." Over the next week, Ryan and Clara set up a series of hidden cameras along Ryan's property and a few strategic locations around the neighborhood. Clara, with her technical skills, ensured they blended seamlessly into porch lights, bird feeders, and even decorative lawn ornaments. They caught hours of footage, mostly Victor stomping around writing bogus fines, but nothing that tied Evelyn directly to her corrupt scheme. That changed one night when Ryan returned home late from a patrol shift. He pulled into his driveway and spotted two figures in dark clothing sneaking around a neighbor's house. The home belonged to an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, who had been complaining for weeks about harassment from the HOA. Ryan shut off his headlights and quietly approached on foot, staying low and using the shadows to his advantage. As he neared the property, he realized the two figures were Evelyn and Victor. Victor stood by the garage door while Evelyn peered into the windows, checking to see if anyone was home. Then Evelyn knelt by the lock and started tampering with it. Ryan's breath caught. They were trying to break in. Before Ryan could react, Evelyn slipped a manila envelope under the door and whispered something to Victor before they both crept away. Ryan waited until they were gone, then walked up to the house. He retrieved the envelope and took it home to inspect its contents. Inside were several forms, legal documents demanding immediate HOA payment, alongside a letter stating that non-compliance could result in foreclosure. Attached was a kind offer from a company Ryan recognized as one of Evelyn's suspected shell corporations, offering to buy the Thompsons' home at a fraction of its value. It was a textbook intimidation tactic: scare the homeowners with threats of legal action, then sweep in with a lowball offer they'd feel pressured to take. The next morning, Ryan VY cited the Thompsons to warn them. The elderly couple was terrified. Mrs. Thompson showed Ryan a series of letters they'd received in the past month, each one more threatening than the last. The Thompsons had tried to pay their fines, but each payment was followed by a new accusation of some obscure violation. The HOA was bleeding them dry. That afternoon, Ryan decided to confront Evelyn directly. He marched into the HOA office without knocking and slapped the manila envelope onto Evelyn's desk. Evelyn didn't flinch. "You're harassing the Thompsons," Ryan growled. "And you're using your fake real estate company to cash in on people who can't fight back." Evelyn smiled lazily. "That's a strong accusation," she said. "But I don't think you've got much proof." "You and I both know what's going on," Ryan shot back. "I've got enough to start an investigation. And when that happens, it's not just you that's going down, it's anyone connected to you." Evelyn leaned forward, her smug smile turning sharp. "Be careful, Carter," she said coldly. "You poke around too much, and things might get unpleasant." Ryan left the office with his blood boiling. He knew Evelyn wasn't bluffing. That night, while reviewing footage with Clara, they caught something disturbing. Two men, both unfamiliar, standing outside Ryan's home. They lingered for several minutes, staring at his patrol car and whispering before disappearing into the night. This wasn't just HOA politics anymore. Evelyn's operation was deeper, dirtier, and far more dangerous than Ryan had realized. Determined to hit back hard, Ryan DeVy set a plan. The next evening, he waited inside his patrol car, parked just far enough down the street to keep watch without drawing attention. Sure enough, around midnight, the same two figures returned. This time, they moved to his backyard, attempting to tamper with the lock on his shed. Ryan emerged quietly, hand on his sidearm. "Don't move," Ryan barked, and the two men froze. He ordered them to the ground, cuffed them, and called for backup. The men weren't just hired thugs. They were contractors tied directly to one of Evelyn's companies. Under questioning, one of them spilled everything. Evelyn had been pressuring residents into VYing their homes, forging violations, and even sabotaging properties to make them look unsellable. If residents refused to sell, Evelyn used threats, intimidation, and harassment to force their hand. Ryan knew this was the break he'd been waiting for. With Clara's EVY Denke and the confessions from Evelyn's hired goons, he had enough to bring the case to the local authorities. But Ryan also knew Evelyn wasn't the kind of woman to go down quietly. That night, Ryan kept his patrol car parked in the driveway, its lights flashing brightly enough for the entire neighborhood to see. It wasn't just a warning to Evelyn, it was a promise. Ryan wasn't backing down. Maplewood Heights didn't belong to Evelyn anymore. It was time for the neighborhood to fight back. The days following the arrest of Evelyn's hired thugs were tense. Ryan knew that exposing Evelyn's corruption wouldn't be enough to stop her entirely. Evelyn was smart, and women like her had layers of protection. Even with EVY Denke tying her to intimidation, forgery, and harassment, Evelyn hadn't been arrested yet. The authorities were still gathering a stronger case, and until then, Evelyn was free to walk the streets of Maplewood Heights, as smug and untouchable as ever. Ryan's patrol car had become a symbol of resistance in the neighborhood. People who once feared speaking out against the HOA began to approach him quietly during his morning jogs or grocery runs. They shared their own experiences, stories of intimidation, fines that seemed suspiciously targeted, and property offers that came only after residents had been bled dry by endless violations. Ryan knew the case was growing, but he needed a final nail in the coffin, something undeniable that would leave no loopholes for Evelyn to slither through. Clara's research uncovered something even more disturbing. Evelyn's real estate scam wasn't just about flipping homes. The shell company tied to her had been funneling money into other suspicious accounts. Large sums were being transferred to unnamed offshore accounts, and there was evidence of potential ties to organized crime. Evelyn wasn't just scamming homeowners, she was part of something far more dangerous. Determined to get a closer look, Ryan decided to bait Evelyn into making a mistake. Using a contact within the police department, Ryan recruited 2 off-duty officers to pose as potential property investors. With Clara's help, they created a convincing backstory. Wealthy developers interested in distressed properties like those Evelyn had been targeting. The goal was simple: catch Evelyn discussing her operation openly. The staged meeting took place in a local diner just outside the community. Evelyn arrived confidently, shaking hands with the fake investors and slipping into her role as the friendly businesswoman with ease. Ryan watched from a nearby booth, pretending to read a newspaper. The conversation began innocently enough: discussions about property values, neighborhood improvements, and investment potential. But soon, Evelyn's arrogance began to show. "You'd be surprised what you can accomplish with a little persuasion," Evelyn said smugly, stirring her coffee. "A few fines here and there, and suddenly people are desperate to sell. The trick is timing pressure them long enough, and they'll fold." One of the officers posing as an investor leaned in. "And the HOA doesn't push back on this?" Evelyn chuckled. "I run the HOA. I decide what's a violation. Trust me, there's always a way to make people pay. Once they're desperate enough, they'll sell for pennies." The arrogance in Evelyn's voice made Ryan's fists clench under the table. Evelyn was so confident in her control over Maplewood Heights that she didn't even bother to keep her methods a secret. After recording enough incriminating remarks to solidify Evelyn's role in the scam, Ryan stepped outside to call his police captain and alert the local authorities. But before Ryan could make the call, a sleek black SUV pulled into the diner's parking lot. Ryan recognized one of the men in Zydea heavy-set figure he'd seen in Clara's surveillance footage. This wasn't one of Evelyn's cronies. This was someone higher up the chain. The man entered the diner, exchanged a brief nod with Evelyn, then slipped an envelope into her hand before leaving just as quickly. Ryan knew that envelope wasn't filled with paperwork. It was money. Evelyn wasn't just feeding off HOA corruption, she was laundering money for organized criminals. That envelope was payback for whatever role Evelyn had played in their larger scheme. The situation had grown far more dangerous than Ryan expected. Evelyn's arrogance had led her to make a mistake, but Ryan knew cornering a woman like that was dangerous. If Evelyn realized she was being targeted by law enforcement, she might lash out. Ryan decided they had to act fast. That night, Ryan and Clara reviewed all the evidence footage from the fake investor meeting, surveillance of Evelyn's late-night exchanges, and financial records showing suspicious transfers connected to organized crime. Ryan presented the case to his police captain the next morning, who in turn reached out to the district attorney. A raid was approved, but they needed Ryan's help to make it happen. The plan was to catch Evelyn red-handed during one of her payoff meetings. Surveillance indicated another meeting was scheduled for the following Friday night, this time at the HOA office itself. The location was risky. Evelyn knew the HOA office inside and out, and if things went sideways, there were too many blind spots for comfort. Ryan insisted on being involved directly, arguing that no one knew Maplewood Heights better than he did. The night of the operation, Ryan positioned himself just down the road from the HOA office. His police team remained hidden in unmarked vehicles nearby. Just after 10 o'clock, Evelyn's black SUV rolled in. Ryan recognized the driver, the same man from the diner. Moments later, Evelyn stepped outside with Victor trailing behind her like a loyal dog. Ryan knew Victor was mostly harmless, a coward hiding behind Evelyn's bravado, but tonight, there was no room for mistakes. The SUV driver handed Evelyn another envelope, and Ryan gave the signal. Officers surrounded the vehicle, guns drawn. Evelyn's face twisted from confusion to panic as she realized what was happening. Victor bolted for the back door of the HOA office, but Ryan intercepted him with ease. The look of pure terror on Victor's face almost made Ryan laugh. "You've got the wrong person," Evelyn barked as officers cuffed her. "This is a mistake. You can't prove anything." "You'd be surprised what a little persuasion can do," Ryan said coolly. "Sound familiar?" Inside Evelyn's SUV, officers found stacks of cash, fake violation notices pre-written with Maplewood Heights residents' addresses, and detailed ledgers tracking money transfers to various offshore accounts. The evidence was overwhelming. Evelyn wasn't just going to jail, she was going away for a long time. Over the following weeks, the residents of Maplewood Heights began to reclaim their neighborhood. Without Evelyn pulling the strings, the HOA board members who had once feared her came forward with additional evidence, exposing even more layers of corruption. Fines were dismissed, wrongful foreclosures were reversed, and Evelyn's tangled web of lies began to unravel. For the first time in months, Maplewood Heights felt like a community again. Neighbors began to trust one another, and families who had once kept to themselves now gathered in the park or waved from their porches. The HOA board elected a new president, a kind-hearted retired teacher named Mrs. Parker, who promised to restore fairness and reason to the neighborhood. One evening, as Ryan sat on his porch drinking a cold beer, Clara joined him. They watched kids playing in the street, their laughter echoing off the houses. "You really shook things up around here," Clara said. Ryan chuckled. "Didn't plan on becoming the neighborhood hero." "Well," Clara said, "next time Victor tries to fine you for your grass being half an inch too tall, I expect you to handle it with a little less drama." Ryan laughed harder than he had in weeks. No promises. The peace in Maplewood Heights didn't last long. Just when the neighborhood seemed to be returning to normal, rumors started circulating that Evelyn had made bail. Ryan wasn't surprised. Evelyn had money, connections, and a knack for slipping out of tight corners. Despite the mountain of evidence against her, Evelyn had secured her release pending trial. The residents of Maplewood Heights were nervous. Even though Evelyn couldn't legally return to the community, people still whispered about what she might try to do next. Ryan kept a watchful eye on his surroundings. He knew Evelyn was the type to lash out when cornered, and after years in law enforcement, Ryan had learned that desperate women made dangerous decisions. Clara agreed. She was convinced and said Evelyn still had people working for her, HOA loyalists or thugs from her criminal dealings. Ryan believed her, and when he spotted Victor lurking near his property one evening, his suspicions only grew stronger. Victor looked different. He wasn't the smug, clipboard-wielding nuisance anymore. He seemed nervous, fidgety, and paranoid. Ryan approached him on the sidewalk. "What are you doing here, Victor?" Ryan asked, his voice firm. Victor flinched like he'd been caught in a crime. "I was just walking," he stammered. Ryan narrowed his eyes. "You're not supposed to be near my property or anyone's, for that matter." Victor swallowed hard, then blurted, "She's coming back." Ryan stiffened. "Who's coming back?" "Evelyn," Victor whispered. "She's not done yet. She says she's taking everything back." Ryan could tell Victor was terrified. Whatever Evelyn had told him had shaken him to the core. Victor was no mastermind, just a follower, but Ryan knew a warning when he heard one. He pressed Victor for more details, but Victor refused to say anything else and hurried away down the street. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He sat on his porch, watching the neighborhood like a sentry. The air felt heavy, like a storm was building. Around midnight, Ryan noticed something, a van slowly circling the block. It passed his house twice, each time pausing near his driveway. Ryan grabbed his badge and firearm, slipping quietly into the shadows. When the van circled back a third time, Ryan moved swiftly, stepping into the street and holding up his badge. Out of the vehicle, Ryan called out. The van's engine revved, and the driver bolted down the road. Ryan sprinted to his patrol car and gave chase. The van sped through Maplewood Heights' winding streets, barely missing parked cars and skidding around corners. Ryan kept his siren off, hoping to stay unnoticed until the van reached the neighborhood's exit. As expected, the van turned toward the main gate, but when it reached the exit, another car blocked the path. Clara's car. She had been listening to Ryan's police radio and acted fast. With nowhere to go, the van's driver jumped out and ran toward the wooded area behind the community. Ryan was faster. He caught up, tackled the man, and pinned him to the ground. The man wasn't some hired thug, it was one of Evelyn's former HOA board members, a guy named Greg Turner, who had mysteriously avoided trouble during Evelyn's initial arrest. Ryan hauled Greg to his patrol car and called for backup. While waiting, Ryan searched Greg's van and found something chilling, a stack of papers with residents' names, addresses, and coded markings. Some homes had red marks beside them. Ryan's house was one of them. So was Clara's. Greg refused to talk. but it wasn't hard to figure out what was happening. Evelyn wasn't just planning to intimidate residents, she was preparing to strike back in a way that could leave real damage. Ryan suspected Evelyn planned to vandalize targeted homes or even stage break-ins to terrify the residents who had turned against her. The following day, Ryan met with the district attorney. The coded papers, combined with Greg's ties to Evelyn, gave authorities enough to issue a search warrant for Evelyn's property. What they found was worse than Ryan had imagined. In Evelyn's rented storage unit were boxes of falsified property documents, phony violation notices, and a pile of fake legal letters designed to trick homeowners into surrendering their deeds. Even more disturbing were several blueprints of Maplewood Heights, with certain homes marked for break-ins. Evelyn had been methodically plotting to scare the neighborhood back under her control. She wasn't just trying to recover her old scams, she wanted revenge. Ryan knew it was only a matter of time before Evelyn tried something even more dangerous. 2 nights later, that time came. Just past midnight, Ryan's phone rang. It was Clara, her voice frantic. "There's someone at the HOA office," she whispered. "I think it's Evelyn." Ryan bolted out of bed and raced to the office. The parking lot was empty except for a familiar carevolence. Ryan approached carefully, his hand hovering near his sidearm. He moved to one of the windows and saw Evelyn inside, pacing furiously and waving a gun. Victor sat slumped in a chair, his face pale and his wrists bound with zip ties. Ryan knew better than to go in alone. He stepped back and called for backup. As he waited, he kept his eyes locked on the window. Evelyn was shouting now, gesturing wildly at Victor, who nodded frantically in response. Then Ryan saw something worse. A red can of gasoline sitting on the desk beside Evelyn. The air smelled faintly of fuel. Evelyn wasn't planning to run. She was planning to burn everything, the HOA office, the records, and Victor with it. Ryan couldn't wait for backup. He moved to the back entrance, unlocked it quietly with the key Clara had given him, and slipped inside. Evelyn's voice grew louder as she argued with Victor. "You were supposed to help me," Evelyn snarled. "You let them win." "I didn't," Victor pleaded. "I swear I didn't." Evelyn raised the gas can, slashing liquid across the floor. The stench grew stronger, stinging Ryan's nose as he crept closer. "Put the can down, Evelyn," Ryan called out firmly. Evelyn spun, startled. Her eyes widened when she saw Ryan, then twisted with rage. "You," she spat. "You did this. You're not going to fix it like this," Jake said calmly. "Whatever you think you're doing, it's not worth it." Evelyn's fingers tightened around her lighter. "You think I won't do it?" she sneered. "I know you're scared," Ryan said. "But this doesn't end well for you. Put the lighter down. Walk away. It's over." For a moment, Ryan wasn't sure Evelyn would listen. But then the sound of sirens filled the air, and Evelyn's face crumbled. She let the lighter fall from her hand and dropped to her knees. By the time backup arrived, Evelyn was cuffed, and Victor had been freed. The police collected what little evidence remained in the office, Evelyn's final desperate attempt to regain power. The neighborhood was safe once more. In the days that followed, Maplewood Heights finally felt like home again. The community gathered to celebrate, hosting a block party in the park. Neighbors laughed and shared stories, no longer afraid to speak their minds. Mrs. Parker, the new HOA president, promised fair policies and even-handed decisions, finally putting the community's fears to rest. Ryan stood with Clara at the party, sipping a cold drink and watching the families play. Clara grinned at him. "You know," she said, "you should run for HOA president." Ryan nearly spit out his drink. "No way. I've had enough HOA drama for a lifetime." But as the sun set over Maplewood Heights, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that the fight wasn't entirely over. Evelyn's shadow still loomed, and Ryan knew that as long as people like her existed, the battle for justice would never truly end. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.